Hello and welcome to day 6 of Figuary. The idea is that you watch the daily guidance video here at Love Life Drawing and then go to the Croquis Cafe channel and do their daily practice session. So we looked at some fairly standard stories in these poses. Like we talked about the story of the pose being the essential information that you want to keep. And then we looked at some really useful things to look for that are really good stories to tell. The curve of the torso centerline, the fold in the torso and that sort of thing. Keeping the sharp angles. These are great places to start and they almost always yield something interesting. So I hope you've started to see a little bit in the poses you're drawing some of these angles and starting to be bold enough to really do justice to some of those angles. But today I wanted to point out that, those are not rules, right? You don't have to look for those lines. The story of the pose is whatever you see, so it doesn't have to be those things. In this pose, there's the curve of the torso centerline and a nice important angle here, so that's great. But you might also see a different story. You might sense a big zigzag like this going all the way down it. So you might choose to bring focus to that pattern in this pose. This guy's torso and legs, they just seem really solid and stable. The spine is straight up, the torso's upright, the legs are even around the center of gravity, pretty solid. But then there's the movement and flow in the arms like this. So you might see that in the pose and want to bring that out, and you might want to have it curling all the way back to the head like this. Or, notice how this pose really works well with the lighting, the direction of the lighting. The light's coming down this way and his arm is pushing back against it and his face is looking right into it defiantly. So you might emphasize the light against the dark in the pose, and that might be the thing that you really want to emphasize. Here there's the curve of the torso centerline and the angle, and that's really useful. But you might also see these overlapping curves, or maybe you'll think about her weight. Her right shoulder is actually in line with her left ankle, so she should be falling sideways except for the arm hooked around the pole. So getting that sense of weight and tension in the pose might be something you want to bring out in the drawing. So in this pose, of course there's the torso centerline, the shoulder line, the angle of the pelvis. But you might also notice this kind of downstream flow of lines all the way from the head to toe, kind of like a river just flowing down. And that might be the sort of story that you want to bring through with the things that you choose to emphasize in your drawing. Just before we continue, if you haven't already got our free guide to life drawing and our really useful newsletter, check them out at lovelifedrawing.com/lifedrawingsuccess. Also, let us know how Figuary is going for you in the comments and use the hashtag Figuary on Instagram. Here is an example from an artist I like, Lane Brown. I think he's telling us about the big zigzag of this pose. One of my favorite figure drawings of all time because everything that matters is given to us with panache and flair, and everything else is just left for our mind's eyes to fill in. So the point of today is we talked about these very useful lines to look at where the story of the pose is often held. The torso center line, the shoulder line, the line of the pelvis. But the point of today is that the story of the pose, the thing that you're going to capture and get across to the viewer, is whatever you see and whatever you really care about. And if you're in doubt, just go with those lines. They're always useful places to start. But if you do see something more, something interesting, go for it. There isn't rules and there isn't right and wrong. What we want to see is what you see. That's because you're the artist, right? So anyway, I hope you enjoy your practice and I'll see you tomorrow.